Chapter 1728 Discussing the Divine. There was something sacred to standing in the dungeon. It was a place of infinite possibility, of rich mana and unending gifts. What purpose did it serve? For what reason did it put forward such bounty, if it wasn't for the benefit of the old races who had lived upon Pangara before the dungeon had made itself known to them? War Bishop Graham Pearson rose to his feet, having completed his hour of prayer, feelings of praise and gratitude still resounding in his heart. After a lifetime as part of the church, exposed to both the light and dark sides of it, he still felt, deep in his bones, the certainty of his faith. The dungeon existed to serve the worthy. Every monster that spawned within it was an offering for those strong enough to claim it. "I don't need to be here," Grand Priest Vinting stated from nearby, not for the first time. Unbothered, Graham turned to the other man, his eyes as cold and blue as mana-infused ice. "Your steps along the path have led you to this place, to this moment," the war bishop chided him patiently. "You are where you are meant to be. It isn't for you to refute or deny, but to pray and meditate on why." Alir's face tightened with anger, but the war bishop had no fear of him. If they were to be compared in the crude metric of levels, Graham outstripped his contemporary several times over. In terms of experience and skill, the gap was significantly wider than that. Between the two men, the only way in which Alir could be considered superior was rank within the church. Not that Graham cared for such things. "Are you at least willing to meet with the delegates from Green Mountain?" Alir asked acidly. He was hoping to find a way to get himself out of the dungeon, Graham could see that. If it wasn't possible by demanding the war bishop let him go, perhaps he could influence others to make it happen. The man was as slippery as a snake, and unworthy of the elevated position he held within the faith. "Of course I am," Graham replied. "You understand that prayer must come before other tasks, do you not?" "Naturally," Alir replied with a scowl. "Then I fail to see the problem. The tail has been stolen. If detected on Amazon, report the violation." Not far away from the two men, Graham could see the delegation waiting. Strong-looking soldiers, experienced professionals with decades of service in the dungeon, fighting waves and purging monsters. People Graham could respect. They understood the trade of what took place in the dungeon, even if they didn't grasp its purpose. He pitied them for their ignorance. What satisfaction could they find in their work without fully grasping the divine meaning behind it? Blindly walking the path was no different than not walking on it at all. Of course, he did not allow the pity he felt to show on his face as he approached them. "Greetings. I am Graham Pearson, War Bishop of the 11th Judgment Battalion. Do I have the honor of addressing Marshal Williams and Marshal Selda?" The two figures glanced towards each other before turning back to him and offering a short bow. Despite there being no significant difference between the armor worn by the marshals and the officers around them, Graham always made it a point to know the faces of important figures he might encounter while in the dungeon. Williams, a short and stocky man, nevertheless carried an air of authority and quiet competence that made him seem much larger than his stature would normally allow. Bald, yet with overlarge and fierce eyebrows, he would be almost comical if not for the power he radiated. Selda was similarly severe, graying hair pulled back tight. She was thin to the point of being gaunt, yet even standing still, she exuded alive and deadly grace. Graham had no doubt the saber sheathed at her hip could be placed at his neck faster than a man could blink. Lesser officers stepped away as Graham approached, Alir following slightly behind. It was Marshal Williams who broke the silence. "There's no need for us to be coy with each other," he said softly, his gaze steady and confident. "That's for the politicians. Do you want our help hunting the monster? If so, we have been given authority to negotiate on parts." "What is Green Mountain prepared to offer?" the war bishop asked simply. 2,000 soldiers for 2 parts in 10, or 4,000 for 5, came the reply. "You are mistaken if you believe that your soldiers are the equivalent of a judgment battalion," Alir said stiffly. "It would be an insult to the church to insinuate such a thing. Always tiresome, arguing over the body parts of a monster before it had even been felled." However, when they were hunting the sort of prey that we're chasing now, it was inevitable that these discussions would take place. Half of this monster's corpse would be worth an incredible fortune. Enough to lift up the Green Mountain for decades to come. 4,000 for 4 parts in 10, Graham said, then held up a hand to forestall the marshals. "I will not negotiate." Williams and Selda exchanged glances once more, communicating with nothing but their eyes. "In addition," Graham went on, "all soul crystal that is gleaned will belong to the church. On this point, I will also not negotiate." After a long moment of silence, Williams nodded. "Aye," he said, "we have a deal. 9,000 soldiers to deal with 1 ant. It would be more than enough. Chapter 1729 The Titan Approaches. Normally, the hardest part about hunting for a powerful monster was trying to pin it in place and bring your force to bear. In the worst case, this could involve a months-long campaign of carefully maneuvering, slowly cutting off tunnels, taking control of sections of the dungeon and gradually herding the creature where you needed it to go. Graham had played this game of cat and mouse dozens of times in his career and was more than proficient in the methods used to put a monster exactly where he wanted it. Yet, this time, that knowledge and experience wouldn't be useful. Not only was the monster unusually intelligent, it had more than a few allies and a literal fortress it could retreat to whenever it wanted. Most monsters, especially powerful ones, lived a solitary existence or cultivated a small following of beasts at most, not a whole civilization of millions. Should the ant seek to retreat back to its territory and vanish, then there was precious little that the war bishop could do about it. As adept as his judgment battalion may be at fighting monsters, it wasn't enough to assault a fortified position and fight a tier 8 mythic while inside of it. However, this was, it seemed, destined to be the strangest monster hunt of his career. Not only had the ant not retreated to safety, it seemed determined to deliver itself to them on a silver platter. Not an hour after scouts had been sent out, reports had come back that the beast was nearby, waiting. Deep in a conversation with the marshals about strategy and tactics, Graham had been taken by surprise at the news. Was the ant less intelligent than he thought? Was there some strategy involved that he didn't see? Further scouting had indeed revealed that the creature wasn't alone. An army was camped nearby, a mix of ants and sapients who should surely know better, along with several other strong monsters that were hiding themselves. So it seemed that the ant did not intend to throw its life away, but instead wanted to engage in direct conflict. Readying the troops for imminent battle wasn't what Graham had thought he would be doing that day, but he welcomed it. A quick resolution, glory to the path, and he would retire back to the barracks beneath the cathedral where he belonged. Do you really intend to march out and confront the monster right now? Grand Priest Vinting asked, unable to conceal the nervousness behind the question. I thought you would welcome such an outcome, the war bishop said, not giving the man much of his attention. Forming up the battalion and their allies was taking longer than he would have liked, and perhaps some more time to better integrate the two forces would have been ideal, but they didn't have that luxury. With the monster so close, they couldn't very well start doing training drills. It could charge their position and be upon them in a matter of minutes. You'll be out of here quickly and back to the cathedral. Love what you're reading. Discover and support the author on the platform they originally published on. What Alir wanted was to be out of the dungeon before any conflict took place. That wasn't going to happen. The Grand Priest's face turned a deeper shade of red as his anger boiled up inside him. Graham had noticed that Alir was having a more difficult time managing his emotions as of late. Before he could open his mouth and vent whatever spite had bubbled up, a nearby voice called to Graham in an urgent tone. The monster is on the move. In an instant, the Grand Priest ceased to exist in Graham's mind. Towards us or away? Towards. It was coming, now. Get everyone in formation. I'll speak to the marshals and make sure they are confident in our strategy. So saying, the war bishop strode away, his armor gleaming in the soft light of the dungeon and white cape fluttering behind him. You've heard, then, Williams noted, not really asking a question. Yes, we can expect to be engaged shortly. Are you both comfortable with the strategy I laid out? Williams and Zelda once again exchanged that silent glance. Graham could tell they knew each other well, with years of experience working together, simply by noting how well they could silently communicate. Your plan is unconventional, Zelda said, phrasing her thoughts with some delicacy. You've laid out your reasons, but we are unsure if we concur with your conclusions. Graham nodded. Then I expect you to clear the field as quickly as possible. So saying, he moved to turn and walk away, only to be stopped by Williams reaching out to snatch hold of his arm. We didn't say we were leaving, the bald man stated softly. If you are not willing to follow the strategy I've laid out, then I do not want your help, the war bishop returned without malice. Without these elements in place, you will be more hindrance than help. Both marshals were taken aback by his forthright attitude. Perhaps they had expected a negotiation, or further discussion. None would be forthcoming, there wasn't time. Sensing a slight change in the flow of mana, Graham turned to see the giant ant round a corner in the distance and looked towards them. It was massive, like a moving building, and the sheer weight of its presence could be felt even at this distance. Its carapace seemed to glow, a soft purple light rippling along its exoskeleton, while its eyes shone like burnished jewels. Without hesitation, it began to walk towards them, unhurried, unthreatened. Graham turned back to the marshals. We will follow your lead, they assured him, both looking past him to the approaching beast. Good. May the path be with us.